Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the CSG Services third quarter analyst report. The topic this quarter is Knowledge is Power, and we're going to talk about channel research findings. Let's jump right into it. We have a lot to cover in a fairly short amount of time. We'll leave a few minutes for your questions. You are attending a topic today, the third quarter channel analyst report, and we're going to cover the following highlights with our guest Anurag from TechAisle. 2017 top 10 mid-market business issues, 2017 top SMB business issues, channel imperatives for 2020, so a forward-looking view, and then one specific conversation about the SMB market with advanced IT sophistication and basic sophistication. This thought leadership series is presented by CSG Services, and we'll talk more about that at the end and maybe how we can help you. With that said, I want to introduce Anurag. Anurag and I have worked together for over a decade in various capacities, and he has emerged as a thought leader and a leading research firm in the SMB channel space. Anurag, could you briefly introduce yourself? We have a lot of text up on the screen. Sir, welcome. Briefly introduce yourself, and we're going to jump into the good stuff.
Thank you, Harry. Glad to be here. This is Anurag Agrawal. I lead TechAisle, a global SMB and channel market focused research and analyst organization. I have been in this analyst rodeo for over 30 years now. Previous to this, I was heading up Gartner's worldwide research, and prior to that, I was responsible for starting IDC's quarterly market share tracking program. At TechAisle, we are very proud to say that we are probably the only organization that is able to connect the dots between the business pain points of the SMBs and the technology challenges that they have. And all our intelligence is derived from the ground up. We conduct maybe 30 to 40,000 surveys each year across different geographies.
Yep, you sure do. And Anurag, you frequently attend industry shows. I know I saw you at the IBM Partner World Conference. Will you be at any shows this fall where people could introduce themselves?
This year, I am going to be at the Salesforce conference. I was at Ignite for a day or so, and then I will be at a Dell conference towards the latter part of the year, and that's pretty much wraps up my travel schedule this year. Yeah.
Great. Let's jump into the good stuff. So we're talking the top 10 mid-market business issues, IT priorities, and IT challenges. Folks, you will receive a copy of this deck as well as a link to TechAisle, so you can go grab this public-facing information yourself. So Anurag, first of all, what are the differences in the three categories, business issues, IT priorities, and IT challenges? How did you frame it up this way?
Right. So this is our seventh year of capturing this level of information across different geographies, and we derive these data points from over 3,000 surveys that we conduct, 3,000 responses. And the way we define mid-market is 100 to 1,000 employee size segment. So what we are trying to understand here is saying, okay, what are the biggest challenges that a typical mid-market or an SMB is really facing in the market today? So that's how we come up with the business issues. And there is, the respondents usually list out maybe about 20 to 25 business challenges that they are facing. And on an average, they are facing about 6 business challenges each day. So, and we percolate these 10 to the top. Then we say, okay, how is technology really going to help them and address those business challenges? How are they connecting the two? And that's how we arrive at the IT priorities themselves. What is the current adoption level? What is the planned adoption level? And then we kind of merge the two to percolate to the top, the top 10. But then adopting IT is not a straightforward thing. today. So when you start to look at it, the IT priorities may be something, but there are typical challenges that the IT staff or the IT department or the business as a whole is facing, right? So we try to surface those challenges themselves. So the idea behind these three is to get to give a view to the suppliers like the channels and the vendors themselves as to what are the pain points you need to address, where these companies are really investing their IT dollars, and what are the challenges that they are facing so that you could address them as well.
Thank you. And my next question relates to item 2 under business issues. So improving the effectiveness in sales and marketing. And here's my thinking. Are you kind of seeing alignment with the notion or the trend that IT spend is shifting to marketing? And I think this question's especially relevant because you'll be at Dreamforce for the Salesforce conference in a few weeks down in the Bay Area. So you're right in the heart of this question. What are people saying here? Improving effectiveness of sales and marketing.
Right. So one of the important things is the fact that, it's the age of the customer, right? Where the customer requirements and the customer intimacy and the, increased satisfaction and ability to attract, retain customers and all are extremely important, which is also reflected in the top 10 business issues. So improving effectiveness of sales and marketing essentially means that, hey, I need to be able to look at customer-facing solutions. And many of this IT spend or the dollar spend or the budgetary authority is also shifting away from traditional IT department to the business level departments as well, whether it be those who are, driving sales, those who are driving marketing, and this also gets reflected in some of the initiatives that many of these businesses are taking, which is end-to-end digitization, which starts with customer-facing or sales or marketing-related solutions, which is also, one of the digital transformation pillars as well. So there is an extreme focus on the effectiveness of sales and marketing because it directly contributes to the growth of the business.
Yep, we're seeing it. Last question for this slide is under IT priorities. The 6th item is Internet of Things. You of all people, Anurag, you're leading. You're publishing the most on this topic that I can find in the SMB space. So briefly, for the purposes of today, what is IoT?
In the most simplistic form, Harry, the IoT is a system of basically interconnected devices, whether it be computing devices or mechanical devices or people, places, things, which have the ability to transfer data amongst themselves without any human interaction. I mean, that's the simplest form. But the value comes into the picture as to, how you are able to extract that data and analyze that data for the betterment of the business.
Perfect. Let's move on. We have a lot to cover in 30 minutes. So we're going to now talk about SMB, and it's the same type of chart. It's business issues, IT priorities, and IT challenges. Anurag, I see that reducing operational cost is low on the business issues list at number 8. Let's talk about that. Back in the old small business server days, quite frankly, when I met you, and then even into the pivot to cloud, the notion was that IT would reduce cost. That was part of the value proposition. Why did this topic, reducing operational cost, appear so low on the list, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. Yeah. So this data you're looking at is for 2016.
Okay.
So the point here is that when the economy for a very long period of time was going through a recession, reducing operational costs was pretty much high up on the list, right? And
Right.
also, our IT suppliers, including analysts like us, we were constantly hammering the fact that, hey, use IT to reduce your costs, because we all know and very well understand that, most of these SMBs have very typical budget constraints to 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 really invest in IT. But
Yep.
as the economy started to come out of the recession, SMBs started to focus on growth. They said, hey, you know what? We need to grow. We cannot be subjected to these harsh unrealities again ever, right? So
Yep.
that's when they said, okay, you know what? Let's focus on other issues, such as how do I empower my employees? How do I improve profitability? Which in a way manifests itself, how do I reduce costs, or how do I improve the quality of the products and services, etc. And at that point in time, there was a realization that happened unknowingly that IT is actually contributing to growth. So in a related study, we found that solutions like collaboration or cloud or mobility, over 70% of these businesses said that these are the solutions that are actually contributing to their business growth, as opposed to what we have been saying and what everybody has been saying in the past, that adopt cloud because it contributes to your bottom line.
Yeah,
Make
yeah,
sense?
and
Yeah.
yeah, it does. And some of the members of the audience today, Anurag, are from a leading U.S. distributor, and it's been an ongoing conversation for some time. And I'm not gonna. We don't have time to dig deep into it. Maybe it's another webinar for another quarter. But there has been this yin yang or push pull about, okay, do we lead with reducing cost, or do we lead with more features, functionality, innovation, productivity, and so on? To be continued. That conversation's not quite done, but that's an interesting finding. Hey, next question. To me, it was interesting that social media is number 2 on the IT priorities list for SMB, but it wasn't on the mid-market IT priorities chart that we previously discussed. I think social media does have a business role. Thoughts on that? Number 2, that's pretty high.
Yeah, it is pretty high because, again, looking back at the things, right? We talk about it's the age of the customer. We need to have customer-facing solutions, and business agility is very important for these SMBs. So when you start to look at those areas, then you start to say, hey, you know what? How do I improve all the aspects of the customer outreach campaigns, right? How do I provide, excellent customer service? Because the 4 pillars of digital transformation within SMB are the operational excellence, employee empowerment, customer intimacy, and the agility as well. So then you start to say, hey, social media is one aspect of it, right? And I need help, because I can't do it by myself. So I need to put that into a list of priorities as to how I can achieve that. And this will help me not only in the digital discovery and digital marketing, digital lead generation, but also I'll be able to provide, help in terms of, customer service. So the reason why it doesn't appear in the mid-market and more in the small business, because you start to see many of these SMBs are using Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and many of these solutions or platforms which are out there to really grow their business.
Yeah, I'll add to that I'm starting to ramp up my Instagram usage, and it's interesting how we're going through some, Anurag, I'm going to call it spam. All of a sudden I'm getting likes and a message from a home builder in Denver, and I'm like, well, you know, I live in Seattle. I'm not interested in a home in Denver. So we're going through that whole era now. Instagram has become a business tool. Anurag, I'm going to move on. I'm always interested in the talent conversation. Number 3 on the SMB IT challenges list is finding qualified and trained people. And I want to ask the question in terms of the context. Are we talking about a low unemployment rate? Are we talking about a skills mismatch or gap? Or, you know, quite frankly, you and I have both managed people, and sometimes there's people that just don't want to work hard. What's the context of that finding?
So, this point actually comes out of the fact that there is that technology today has become a lot more complex than in the previous years, right? You talked about, you know, small business server, you talked about client server. You know, the adoption of technology was very linear. Everybody understood it. As the businesses grew, they went through a ladder approach and adopt the next technology, which were built upon the previous technology building blocks. Today, it is very complex, and there is a tremendous technology sprawl which is happening within businesses of all shapes and sizes, whether it be a small business or a large enterprise business. So when technologies become complex, when there is sprawl is happening because the technology today is addressing specific pain points. So that's where, you know, many solutions are being adopted. At the same time, the technology is changing very rapidly. And there is a strong need to continue to adopt technology because of a variety of reasons. So it's very hard to find the skill sets within the IT staff that have very specialized skills, whether it be, you know, on implementing mobility security or managing excessive data growth or using analytics, right? So that's where it becomes a challenge. And the other point is that these SMBs or even the mid-market firms do not have the capacity to pay higher salaries for well-qualified IT staffing, right? So it becomes a tremendous challenge. It becomes a perfect opportunity for the channel partners with the appropriate skill sets to be able to provide that level of service or to provide that level of skill sets to these SMB customers.
Thank you. Why don't we move on to the next slide? So we're doing a roadmap view, channel imperatives for 2020. And we have a couple minutes. We have then one more topic, and we'll take questions. Thank you, folks. By the way, folks, if you want to use the questions feature in the dashboard to ask your questions, we'll get to those. Number 1, management has to manage and measure differently. Now, Anurag, I want to give my version of the truth. My oldest son is wrapping up his degree in aerospace engineering, and he's been working for a defense contractor. And it's very interesting to see him in his first real job and how he interacts with, let's just say, people from my generation, and then in between. It's different, Anurag. I got a front row seat in terms of how the younger people are managed. I may not have the context that you intended for your study, but I just wanted to add that observation. But what's the context of 2020 for management styles?
Yeah, so this is a very deep study that we did on the channel partners to really understand, you know, what separates the successful cloud channel partners from those that are unsuccessful. And this was very metrics driven and qualitative driven and all that. So what we are trying to say here is that cloud, we are increasingly immersed in a post-transactional market, right? And when we are immersed in a post-transactional market, we are not selling products or pure services anymore, right? Because the cloud itself has transformed the way IT delivers, right? It impacts the economics of resource requirements, right? And creates opportunities for user organizations. When you have these type of situations where IT capacity and business functionality is delivered more as a service, then you have challenges. So the channel partners themselves have to look at their internal organization very differently. That means how do I manage? What the KPI should I bring to the table, right? How does lead generation change for me, right? Those are many questions that you need to answer. And the sales, I mean, we are asked this question about how do I compensate my sales force because I am delivering as a service, right? I mean, and we advise that you have to start to look at it in many different ways, either as a percentage of gross profit, as a percentage of total value, based on estimated consumption, and so on and so forth. So there are many advantages and disadvantages. So that was the intent behind this statement. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can interject right there, you know, I live in Seattle, and a lot of my friends work for Microsoft, and Microsoft is, of course, transforming its business model. That's a well-known fact, and you can see it in major, you know, media organizations covering that transformation this summer. And Anurag, it's just very interesting. It's a reality. It's interesting, but with cloud, even at Microsoft, they're transforming how their sales force works and how they're compensated. Because think of it, if your goal was to have an enterprise agreement that was renewed every year and you were compensated for that, it's very different when it becomes a recurring revenue subscription model to Office 365 where there's not the enterprise agreement negotiations. Does that make sense? It's changing, my friend.
Yeah, it is. It is. Absolutely.
Yep. Quickly, why don't maybe let's check off on the expanded purview of marketing. So I think of I'm old school. I think of the 5 Ps. What was your intent here with sort of the expanded role of marketing?
So what we mean here is marketing's role is not just lead generation, right? I mean, that has been the most used concept in the past, right? Because if you combine this information with some of the other information of the data points that we got, right?
Yep.
A channel partner gets involved, or a channel partner is contacted by an SMB customer only at the 50% decision-making cycle, when the only conversation left is to discuss the price and the deployment, right? So when such a situation happens, what is the role of marketing? It includes many different things, right? It includes how do I create that brand awareness so that when the customer is ready, they think about their particular brand. How do I partake in the actual sales process instead of just generating leads to the salespeople? How do I analyze that information, that leads that I have generated are of value? Is there a feedback loop? So there are many, many things that we could talk, and obviously we don't have enough time here, but there could be another webinar.
Don't get me going.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll end on this for this slide, and we'll get to the last slide. But I was in a very interesting conversation earlier this week, a friend of mine, and it essentially amounted to farm to table, that movement. And he was really keying in on marketing as almost supply chain management. And I thought, well, you know, I hadn't quite thought of it that way, but I get it. With all the cool tools we we have, there's going to be some of that inventory, supply chain management, and so on. Last slide, my friend. We have, I really like this one. Forgive the, I expanded the image a little bit, forgive. But we have advanced IT at 32% and basic IT at a larger number, 43%. So what's the difference? I mean, it seems like a lot of channel partners are still going to look to basic IT as bread and butter and cash cow, but I guess they better be thinking about advanced IT. What's your pleasure on this slide?
Yeah, so what we are saying is, you know, we started to look at the market slightly differently and said, hey, is employee size the best way to look at the market, right? You know, a small business butcher shop does not have the same level of IT adoption as an architect's firm, for example, right? Yep. So typically an IT supplier, can it market the same tools, the same solutions, the same IT, and the same way to both these entities? Both of them may be like 10 employee size companies, or they may be 100 employee size company, right? So we started to look at it from the IT maturity, what we call as the IT sophistication. We look at a plethora of variables, about 25 or 30 different variables, to really slot them into these areas. So obviously, the maximum are in the basic and the advanced IT segment. And the difference is, what we are saying is, hey, advanced IT are the ones which are using a lot more emerging technology. So if you are in the areas of analytics, IoT, you know, advanced collaboration, and all those areas, that's where you start to really identify those businesses that are in the advanced IT, you know, segment. But then the basic IT is not that they're going to remain at the basic IT level forever, right? They're going to be moving up to the advanced IT level. But if you break this down into small business and the mid-market business, this construct changes quite dramatically, because in the mid-market segment, there are no pre-IT, which is a no-brainer. There is a smaller percentage of basic IT as well. There's a larger percentage of IT, advanced IT, and there is a fairly larger number of enterprise IT as well. So what we are saying is, hey, you know what? Identify what your strengths are, what solutions you offer, and then zero in on those SMB customers which meet with the sophistication levels that you are able to advise them and give them, either as an advisory role or orchestration role or what have you.
Yep. Yeah, I look at it like when I was active in consulting in the 90s. I don't want to date myself. I guess I still am, but basically, I think of it this way, Anurag, that the basic IT, let's say that that's your niche, okay? But you don't want to spend 100% of your time in a niche. And I'm not quite using the right metaphor, but you know, basic IT is here today. I know with a lot of our MSPs, it's their bread and butter. That's fine. But you need to develop new niches, right? And so we need to be cognizant and spend some time up in advanced IT, learning new technologies, developing new clients, etc. Let's move to the last slide. We're at time, so let's move to the last slide, my friend. I have a couple of questions, and folks, here's Anurag's contact details. Please go over. There's, boy, Anurag, you're a great community citizen, because not only do you have a lot of content, but a lot of your content is unlocked. Why don't you talk about that? You're putting a lot of good stuff out in the wild. Is that your business philosophy to give to the universe?
It has happened by by default, because we are collecting and creating, analyzing great content as we think ourselves. But then, keeping that great content to ourselves is not going to do anybody any good, right? I mean, true, we have got all the IT companies that subscribe to our services, and, thank God for that. But the point here is, hey, you know what? We need to come out and tell the world as well as to what's happening within the SMB space and the channel partner space. So what we do is, like clockwork, every week, at least every Monday morning, we put out one insight or the other on various topics. Like the last 2-3 weeks, we have devoted on digital transformation and the SaaS adoption journey and so on and so forth. So our idea is to be able to reach to different audiences and tell them, if you are an SMB, see what your peers are doing. If your channels, see what your other peer channels are doing. If you're an IT supplier, see what your SMB customers and your channel partners are faced with.
Thank you. And folks, before I get to the questions, once again, my name is Harry Brailsford with CSG Services. If we can be of service to you, the audience, we specialize in channel partner program management, sales and marketing agency functions, and resources. So let's get to the questions. We have Bill Hirsch from D&H Distributing asking, how does a VAR identify what segment a small business falls into? He has two questions. They're kind of related. I'll read the whole thing, Anurag. Once again, how does a VAR identify what segment a small business falls into? How much of this segmentation is a result of SMB management thought processes? And how do you recommend that VARs work to change those processes?
Yes, Bill. Hi, Bill. This is Anurag. So, what the question? So
relates to segmentation. How do you know what segment the small business is in?
Right. So we look at the data from two different areas, right? One is the attitudinal segmentation, which speaks to your question as to how much it is management driven. So we look at it from the attitude of that organization as a whole, right? Where their head is, what their attitude is towards technology, towards their business, towards the challenges that they are facing. Then we also look at it from the perspective of, how do they treat technology. So we look at those areas and not look at the firmographics of the organization, which means revenues or locations or employees and all those, because that can dirty the segmentation. So that's how we arrive at various segmentation. How do you really identify them is the fact that once you have these attitudinal segmentations in place, then you can go back and connect them with the firmographics, right? So for example, you have, employee size businesses or the average revenue or average number of IT staff and all those things which are there. And then we can help you build those list of questions that your salespeople or your marketing people can really ask at the outset and quickly put these SMB customers into the various segments, whether at their low end of the IT adoption, high end IT adoption, or in terms of their cloud maturity. Are they at the low end of the cloud maturity curve or the high end of the cloud maturity curve, or even in the digital transformation journey? So there are various ways to kind of look at it.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Thank you, everybody, for attending. It's my friend Sherry, who's a IT recruiter. So that's interesting to me. And she asked a very simple question. She asked, is a replay available And will we receive the deck? And Sherry, thank you for attending. The answer is yes. I'll get a thank you email out shortly with the deck and a replay link. So Anurag, that does bring us to time. In fact, just a little bit of overtime. And I appreciate you taking time out of your busy practice, your busy day, to have a talk on the CSG Quarterly Analyst Series. And folks, what we're trying to do here is engage in periodically having a thought leadership webinar to make us all better citizens in the channel, the IT sector, the SMB sector in particular. Anurag, do you welcome direct phone calls? And can I share
Yes.
your email address?
Sure. I mean, I'm on my email 24/7 in the field. Yes. Feel free to share my email address.
Okay, I'll do that in the thank you letter. And once again, folks, thank you very much. This is the end of the third quarter today, Friday the 29th. From a business point of view, do you know where your earnings are? And get ready for a rodeo ride in the fourth quarter to bring it home in 2017. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for attending. Bye-bye.